Welcome everyone to another Google Tag Manager kind of Ask the Experts. We'll try and do something a little bit different this time round. So I was going to do a rapid fire kind of session. There are some questions that I've kind of pre-prepared, so they're on Google Moderator, which should be on a link in the comments. So if you add a question now into Google Moderator, then hopefully I'll have a chance to kind of answer that as I'm going through them. So there was a conference over the weekend called Measure Camp, and this was one of the ideas that I was hoping to do from that, but well, I'll just do it as a Hangout on Air instead. So I'll just play the introduction from Mastermind just to remind people of what it is, which you may... Oops. So Mastermind was an old TV series from the 80s where you get asked lots of questions about a particular topic. So I'm just going to jump to the slides now. So if I go stop sharing, share, Mastermind, share. From current slide. So yes, your guest this evening is Phil Humphreys. Myself. I'm going to jump over to the Google Moderator. I'm going to be kind of answering my own questions here a bit, just because there aren't that many questions that got kind of submitted. So this should be interesting. I'm just going to get ready to start the timer. So I've set the timer for 10 minutes, and then I'll answer just general questions after that. So hold on, I'm just going to start the timer. Oh, actually, if I do, I'm just going to now jump over to, and my specialist subject is the life and times of GTM. So I'm now going to jump over to Google Moderator and go through these questions, which is here. So I'm just going to change to share screen again. So share screen, Google Moderator. That's everyone. Okay, so hopefully you should see the Google Moderator screen now. Apologies if I didn't press present to everyone on that one, but let me know if I'm doing anything wrong by pressing the or adding comments in the chat box, just because I can't see everything on the screen. So let's kind of go through it. So I just press the start on the clock. So I've got 10 minutes. So the first question in here was, I have a site that has multiple companies using which are using a portal for individual member base, same registration, sign-in, account pages, and journey. How can I set up analytics to ensure that each company gets actionable info on their users? So this is a portal. So this is a bit like having tracking on Google Analytics itself, but you want a customer to log in and just see data about their own properties. So there's a couple of ways of doing it. The first one you can do within GTM, you can do a rolled up tracker and a local tracker, and then you just grant users access to the local tracker, and then when they sort of log in into a portal, then you just grant them access to only the profile that they're able to use. So that way you'd manage the login part within Google Analytics. The other way of doing it is to use the embed API, and where you just use a rolled up tracker, and then you use the Google Analytics API and you'd pull out the data that's just relevant for each kind of company or host name. So Doug from ConversionWorks has got an excellent kind of set of slides on using the embed API for building these kind of in-house reporting systems for multiple companies accessing the same information. So I suggest if you Google those slides, and that would allow you then to just control what's seen. You can also, so the embed API is a good way of doing it. You can also do it using Excel reports via the API as well, and you can actually set up a Google Sheet that outputs to like in read-only mode or outputs as in HTML mode. So you can do it that way as well with using Google Charts within a Google Sheet. That's the other way of doing it. Cool. Next question. When will the auto migrate button be available in V2? So this is a question kind of for Google, but apparently it's meant to be 2 months after the the Migrate button will be available very soon, and then the full migration will be available 2 months after that. We don't know yet when the Migrate button's going to be shown. It's just kind of any time now. It's still in kind of beta testing, and they're just before rolling this out to the masses, they're making sure that it works perfectly. So the reason for waiting there is just to make sure that you're not the first person to test that. You might have heard of the expression parachute testing. Well, it's a good idea not to be the first person to kind of jump out of a plane unless other people have tested it first. So don't be in a hurry to migrate, but that will be happening very soon, that button hopefully, it means then you don't need to change your GTM account ID when you're switching, which is pretty cool. But at the moment it's going to be similar to an export from V1 into V2, as in triggers and variables are not going to be tidied up. So there's still a bit of kind of a work to sort of clean it up to make it easier to manage in V2. Next one, when will content experiments work in GTM? So again, this one's probably going to happen after the migrations of being completed for V2. The problem with Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, is that it changes all code to synchronous, to asynchronous, sorry. So it just means then that if you try and deploy an A/B testing tag which changes the content on the page or does a redirect, the content may have loaded before that redirect tag has executed. So you can't reliably run sort of these A/B testing tags via GTM. Currently, there is a guy if you actually search for Google Content Experiments in GTM, there's a guy in Germany that's written a really detailed blog post about how you can do it, but it's really, really complex in terms of how you'd implement that. So I would actually suggest kind of waiting for a native solution, but there's not an answer to that date that I can provide at the moment, because again, it's kind of down to Google's kind of timelines. Cool. Are there any technical guides for GTM available? Which a question I asked myself here. So if you go to bit.ly/GTM dev guide number 2, so bit.ly/GTM dev guide 2, then there's a free dev guide you can download on there, which has got a lot of detail. Or there is also the Google developer guides, which are also okay, not quite as much detail, but it's a good one on there, hopefully, which will help people. Next question: what is the latest update on V2 migration? We have clients stuck on V1 and some of the V2 features. Yeah, so CSS Selectors is a feature that's now only available in V2. So it's a reason to migrate. Again, this kind of comes back to the beta testing of the auto migrate button. So once that has passed through beta testing, then it's going to be rolled out to the masses. The timelines of that is a little bit kind of unknown. But yeah, it is cool that there's now a really useful feature that's V2 only, which is good. There are some other stuff that V2 does, which is as well, like native, obviously default variables, and also doing nesting within variables, and also lookup tables, which is you can't easily do in V1. But the CSS selector is the kind of killer feature. The other one, so I've got a question on here. So migrated using a URL hostname equals live domain, exported from V1 to V2, and it doesn't stop live tags or stop tags from firing in V2. Why is this? So what this means is that you can, when you're setting up an account, you may want to add a tag to prevent a tag from firing on a live server. So it just means you're just testing it in dev, or you're just testing it when debug mode is set to true, where you've got the little pop-up pane that's visible. So the very slight difference between V1 and V2, if you're configuring these manually, is that the V1 interface for blocking rules, it works for both GTM.JavaScript at the start of the page, GTM.DOM and GTM.window loaded. But for V2, if you add like a page view, an all page view rule as a blocking rule, that only kind of stops the tag loading on GTM.DOM. GTM.JavaScript as in GTM start. So you have to actually change the way that you build blocking rules within V2 if you're using this particular method, and it's much better to actually use an event of anything and then add the URL hostname or page hostname rule. So this is really important to kind of start getting used to within when you're building blocking rules within V2. I have heard that the migration button is going to account for this when stuff migrates, but I'm just warning you, if you manually add a blocking rule that is set to page view and you have tags that are trying to fire on GTM.dom or window loaded, then that blocking rule won't prevent them from firing unless the blocking rule is set to count for all of those events of both GTM.dom, GTM.JavaScript, and GTM.window loaded, or event.star, because also you could have just a generic event of something added to a page, which also would potentially you might want to block on all pages, kind of blocking rule as well. I've exported to V1 to V2. How do I automatically change to use default variables and change triggers to rules? So again, there's not an automatic way of doing this at the moment, but you can combine variables with default variables in V2 by literally renaming the variable names so they're the same as the V2 names. So for instance, if you change URL in lowercase to page URL, GTM and you'd have to actually you'd have to untick the default variable of page URL, and then if you actually had a macro of URL that you've imported, if you renamed that to page URL with capital P and a capital URL, and then ticked the box to enable that default variable, what you'll find is it will give you a warning saying this variable already exists. Do you want me to overwrite and combine it? So by using that method, you can save a lot of time by having to replace default variable names, because it blends them really nicely and cleanly within the V2 interface. So that will save you a lot of time. Switching triggers, or auto events in V1 to V2 triggers. Unfortunately, there's no magic solution for that at the moment. So that's just kind of one you've unfortunately got to manually change. Name 5 features that are only available in V2. So CSS history listeners, default macro variables, and the ability to change, add a macro within a default is V2 only. And we're trying to think of 2 others. I'll have to come back to that question. Whoops, okay, that's the timer. I started, so I finished. So I was trying to think of 2 more features that are GTM2 only. Oh gosh, let me think. V2 only features, that would probably have to be the ability to change when a page is on window, page view, or window loaded, or GTM DOM is now a native feature in V2, so you don't need to manually configure it. And then must be one more, which would be, oh gosh, I think probably default variables. I'm not sure I mentioned that already. So hopefully that's all of them. So I'll now switch back to the interface and unpause everyone. Whoops. So Google Hangouts. Stop showing screen. Okay, can you see me okay? Okay, yeah, so I thought this was the wig from GTM, from the Measure Camp event that I didn't actually have a chance to use, so I thought I'd give that, thought it might be quite funny. So have you got any questions that I didn't answer, Thomas?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. All right, so I can jump back to the other questions, which were on the list. So the other ones were, when will there be a GTM certified individual exam? So again, this one I've been pestering the GTM team for ages, and that's going to be probably happen after V2 have fully migrated. Again, I don't know a date for it, but it's something that I'd really like to see. And the other question, this is a question. All right. So I'm going to jump back to the other questions, which were on the list. Oops. The other ones were. I'm getting a bit of an echo now. I'm just going to. Will be a GTM certified individual exam. So again, this one. Pause that. Oh, it's gone. Okay, so I'll just kind of answer these two questions and then close the window just so there's not a loop. The two questions that are left. So there's one which was. I want to view a competitor's GTM container and then import that. Is there the ability to export or view a GTM container in XML? So, for instance, is there the ability to go to a URL that's got gtm.xml and then the GTM account ID in a similar way to where you've got sitemaps.xml? So there's not at the moment. There's a feature I would really like to see. The reason for that is it's really hard to share a container publicly. For instance, I've shared a Google account login, but people can't access that easily from multiple countries because the Google accounts login prevents it. So it would be great given that JavaScript is publicly available, to have a kind of a non-minified version or a version that you can just import into another account in order to inspect. That would really help with kind of debugging and shared learning and also just general GTM health checks. I've heard some people that say they're worried about the security aspects of this, but because JavaScript is publicly available, you could in theory do this already, but it's just hard to do because you've got to unobfuscate, and Google could change the way that the library is built, and then you'd have to rewrite your way of doing that. So ideally, if they just had a way of viewing it in XML that's publicly available, that would be a really, really cool feature. And the last question on here, I have a site that has, I think I've answered this question already actually from I have a site that has multiple companies that use the portal for their individual member basis, same sign-in, ensure that you can't actionable. I think I've done that one already, actually. So, okay, I'll jump to Q&A. So I'm going to close that box so there's not a loop. And I'm just going to close my other screens just so it's not kind of sort of feedback loop is not there. Just going to try closing that. Okay, I'm just going to, oops, if I click on that, so it should now jump to the next person that talks. So if you unmute yourself and just ask a question. Or I can select someone.
Phil, could you elaborate a bit about the CSS selector, which is the real use cases of that?
Okay, so I mean, to be honest, I haven't actually used this as a live example yet. So all I can say is from what I've seen from other people that have commented. So Simo has a great blog post explaining that. The idea behind that is that so GTM auto events for things like link listeners are great, apart from there's certain instances where you can't use them. So if a link either doesn't have an ID or doesn't have a class, or that class is not is say more than 3 levels away, then you can't easily select clicks on that button. So CSS selectors give you the ability to specify within the DOM tree a particular sort of button or link, so that it means that if you haven't got clean markup or haven't got IDs and classes, you can still track elements on a page in a reliable way. So previously, the only way to do this was to use custom HTML and JavaScript selectors, jQuery selectors, and then add events triggered by those jQuery selectors. So this is a way of being able to use native GTM and without using jQuery selectors. So it's a safer way because you're not needing to use custom HTML. The piece of the puzzle that's missing, though, is you still have to manually figure out what the element of that selector is. So you've got to use inspect within Chrome or the Firefox sort of inspector in order to work out what those elements are. That it would be great if there's a way of just clicking on elements and pulling out the actual sort of CSS selector part of that. Have you actually tried it yourself?
No, not yet.
Okay. Yeah, I mean this is more so the GTM. So there are some other tools like Satellite or DTM, which do have kind of CSS selectors and some kind of other kind of auto event features that don't exist within GTM yet. So this is there may be some other blog posts about DTM where they've used these sort of functions. So I'd encourage you to check those out. It's still a good idea to kind of do clean markup though, regardless of the ability to do CSS selectors. So this is kind of CSS selectors are kind of fixing a broken wheel. If the site's not got clean markup, someone could change where an element is nested, and your selector's still going to break. So
it's a workaround for.
Yeah, it's not a magic bullet, but it's definitely a nice kind of a grenade or a bazooka to be able to kind of fire. Especially also if you've got like a class that doesn't specifically define like an element, or if you want to like track clicks on a navigation bar or something, then it could be quite useful there. So yeah. Any other questions? We're on half an hour. Okay, so the other stuff I suppose I can mention, so I did some talks at Measure Camp on the weekend, which was cool. I mean, those slides, I'll put the link to them in the chat window, which is presentations there. If you could post a link in the comments for people that are just watching, so that's if you go to SlideShare and just search for my name and go to presentations. So I've done a couple of updates. I did a really cool one so I've updated quantified self with some interesting kind of stuff, and I've uploaded some other slides. I didn't actually present on those. I uploaded my Web Analytics Exchange kind of slide for Computer Aid, and an old one on cookie law, and then I represented the Black Hat Analytics and 4Clicks project and JSON-LD. So which I can kind of whiz through one of those if that's helpful. Which of those three topics are of most interest?
Just a second. You say Computer Aid, one, Black Hat is the second, and which one was the third?
So quantified self. Oh, well, there is JSON-LD as well, but I did present that one at Super Weeks. You may have seen that already.
It depends on what Black Hat Analytics is for you.
Okay. So
cookieless tracking, or
the Black Hat one was all about tracking ethics, and it was when to decide when your website is ethical or not. What actually would be really good. There was actually an interactive component of the Black Hat presentation, which was a quiz. So I might actually, if I post a link to the quiz, that would probably be good, because it's it's just a kind of really short sort of bit. Measure Camp, Black Hat. Let's print out that one. Shadowbox link. So I'll see if I've got a short link for the quiz actually, which is where is it? Okay. I'm going to log into Bitly quickly. So I've pasted that link into the chat window, but for people that are watching it as a Hangout on Air, it is this one. Copy. So it's just black hat printout. So that one's, I'll just repeat that again. So it's a bit.ly and then / black hat printout, all in lowercase. So that should take you to a Dropbox link, which is a PowerPoint sort of file. Wait, if that's a load. And it's an interactive test. So it should say light score. Have you been able to load that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just kind of do a bit of explanation. So what is Black Hat Analytics? So this was basically a way of defining what's okay, what are you allowed to do and what are you not allowed to do, and where are instances of people where they've intentionally done something bad and where they've accidentally done something bad, and also where have they done it to cause harm and where have they done it just through lack of knowledge or you know, lack of or accidentally. So well, we can try this. So if I jump to the slide, so from the current slide, so I'm really interested in your feedback on this. If you're able to load that file, you should get a positive score from the first bit, and if you let me know what that is. So I'm going to jump to the screen presenter view, just so that I can see those slides. So share screen, that one. That'll do it. Okay, and from the current slide, so can you see where it says the light score now?
Yes.
And it should say, okay. So the first one, so that bear in mind this was just to gauge a score of how ethical are you, or how, you know, how white are you, wearing a white wig. So the first one was, have you got a privacy policy? So if you get that right, you get a tick, you get 1 point. And the next one was, on your privacy policy, do you have a link on all your pages that links to that privacy or cookie policy page? If you're not sure, there's a tool that you can run called PowerMapper that searches for that link. So most sites, it's probably in the footer of the page as a little link or the header of the page. So if you've got that, you get a tick, you get another point, so you've got 2 points. And then these next ones, you get 0.5, well, 0.25 of a point. So for each of these, so the first one is, do you mention the word cookies or how Google uses cookies on your privacy page? So if you do, you get a quarter of a point. The second one, again for a quarter of the point, is, do you mention the word do not track or DNT on your privacy policy page? You don't actually need to say that you're doing anything with that do not track. You just need to say that you're completely ignoring it. You think I'm kind of kidding here, but you actually, the do not track kind of laws in California are literally just say that if you know what it is and if your servers respond to it or not, you basically say, no, my servers don't respond to do not track, but I know what it is. If you're mentioning that, you get 0.25 of a point. The other one is, if you're linking to the Google Analytics opt-out, there's a requirement of using Google Analytics is you have to actually have this opt-out link, but not that many people actually add it. So you get 0.25 of a point if you do that. And also, if you link to add choices, that's the little blue icon, or the double-click remarketing opt-out, you get another 0.25 of a point. So how are you doing so far on point scoring on that? So you've got a maximum of 3 points that you could get so far. And the next one was, have you updated your privacy policy in the last 12 months? So you get another point for that. And if you're using session recording like ClickTail or Yandex Metrica, then have you changed any sensitive fields to say ClickTail sensitive or Metrica no keys? This means that you don't key capture on those sensitive fields. That's a lot of companies don't turn that on, and they don't even know they need to turn it on. So it's a good point to get if you got that. Another one was on, if you're using, this is a good one actually for GTM, you can turn this on really easily, is have you got anonymized IP enabled for German visitors? So what that is it's a field within GTM, within the template for Google tags, is there's a setting where it says anonymized IP, both in your GA Classic tags and your universal tags. You have to actually turn it on all tags, not just your page view, so on events, transactions, and social. So it's actually a good idea to set it as a constant string sort of variable or macro, and then reference it that it's on. But you can actually, what you can do is you can use a lookup table on that reference. So you say if the host name is mydomain.de, set it to true or enabled, or if a folder /de is enabled, set it to true. Otherwise, leave it as unset. You can also, if you've got a plugin that's outputting a GeoIP lookup to a country on the page, that also allows you to dynamically set that variable. If you don't set that, you get into trouble with kind of the German government if you've got kind of a large number of visitors from your site in Germany, because it's not based off where your HQ is based, it's where the majority of your visitors are sort of coming from. So that'd be great, interesting to know if people have actually turned that on. And the other one is, have you ticked the box to turn on two-stage authentication? That's where if someone managed to steal your login credentials for GTM, and they're able to kind of add malicious code, say you've been using Wi-Fi in an airport and they've kind of sniffed your credentials somehow, or they've done a man in the middle and able to access your login details. The two-stage auth means they also need to steal your mobile phone in addition to your login details. So it's a bit like FTP whitelisting, but it means it adds an additional level of security and safeguards your site. So if you're doing that, everyone should really be doing that on any live GTM accounts. Then you get an additional point. And the other one is, have you got a custom alert set up to say if you're accidentally capturing emails or symbols in the page URL report? So you get an alert if you suddenly get those if a new marketing campaign goes out and they've accidentally kind of set that incorrectly on email landing pages or within a form that's posting using get rather than post. And almost last one, have you ticked the box to exclude robot traffic? That's more of a preventing kind of robot pollution from sites like speed checking tools or some other kind of more malicious sites that try and create fake traffic. And have you actioned at least one of the GA health check alerts? That's a little pop-up box you see within Google Analytics where it slides down and says you've got like a blue notification or a red warning. If you've actioned one of those, you get an additional point. So that's enough of me kind of talking. How have people kind of scored on that list so far out of 10?
I think around 5 or 6 maybe.
Okay, cool. Well done. That's good going. So you've got.
Sure, sorry. Go on.
So you're a Luke. You're lucky. So okay, well done. That's really cool. So that's the first part of it. The next bit of it, so this is how good you are and how proactive you've been, and then the next bit was how kind of evil or mean you've been. So Thomas, you're asking about kind of what is black hat or what is the kind of dark side. So this is where it gets kind of interesting, where people have been kind of maliciously cheating the system. So this is kind of a scoring of evilness. So the first one here was, have you got any third-party cookies enabled on your site? I might actually tweak this so it says third-party remarketing cookies. So you get a -1 if you're doing that. The reason why I've put that is because remarketing cookies allow you to be tracked and marketed to across a network of sites, just not your own site. So they're not as white as first-party performance cookies. So that's why you get a -1 for that. And have you turned on frequency capping? So this is if you're doing any display-based advertising. You can actually add a setting to say, don't show my message to my users too often, so you don't kind of annoy them or sort of freak them out. So you can say, only show me this advert sort of once per, or say a maximum of 3 banner impressions per day or something like that, so they don't get kind of spammed. So if you've added that setting, then you get a -1. Oh, sorry, if you haven't enabled that setting, you get a -1. My mistake. And then we've got user ID tracking is enabled but not declared. So this one again, if you're using user ID, it's strongly recommended to tell your users that you are using it, just so that if you don't tell them what you're doing, then it's harder to argue that they made an informed decision. So you just need to be sort of clear and honest with them. If you turned on that setting and you haven't told your users, then it's a little bit kind of grey. So the other one as well is if you're using that user ID, you haven't told them, and then you're doing a custom data append on, so say you're passing user ID into a custom dimension, and then you're doing a CSV upload to that dimension. So you're allowed to do this except for using financial data or anything that uniquely identifies someone, or any sort of sensitive data like health data. So because this is moving more into the kind of grey area, I put this as a -1 just because any server-side data append based off a user ID is kind of borderline, kind of definitely moving more in the darker direction. So you get -1 for that. If you're using any device signatures tracking, you can only actually do this on Android natively. Device signature is something within a mobile phone that you can't ever delete. It's persistent within the device, so it means that someone can't be untracked once you know what their device signature is. So Apple actually turned off this field, so you can't use it on Apple, but you can use it on Android. So if you get a -1, and that's actually, there is device ID as a field within GTM for apps as well, so it's possible to use that natively. So if you're using that and you haven't told your users you're using it, you get a -1. And also email address stored in Google Analytics. So the previous slide I mentioned, are you checking to see if you're accidentally capturing email address? If you're actually capturing them and you haven't done anything about it, and you haven't added exclude parameter or added a filter in Analytics or a custom JavaScript macro to prevent it being captured, or changing the site to prevent it being pushed in, then you get a -1. And if you're storing passwords in Google Analytics, you get a -1. It's even, I wouldn't suggest even capturing encrypted passwords. So these could be random characters. You just generally don't want to capture them, even if they're just non-useful sort of random session numbers or pseudo-random noise. Just strip them out, because you can't use them for analysis. Because if your funnel-based reports are not effective if you have random numbers on say reset password pages. So if you haven't actioned that, you get a -1. If you're doing any sort of respawn of a session ID or overriding a user intent, so say the user has said, I don't want to be tracked, or they've deleted their session cookie or text cookie, and you're overriding that with a different cookie via either Flash or Silverlight or e-tags, or you're respawning it based off login credentials or whatever, then you get a -1 for that, because you're overriding a user intent where they've expressed that they don't want to be tracked. You can use the do not track header to turn these features on and off. So when I've been configuring, although do not track is actually designed for do not target, you can use it to also reduce your to add it as an additional safeguard if you're doing any of these really kind of stealth sort of methods, although even you shouldn't really be doing them at all really, but you can actually, within GTM, you can pick up the value of do not track as a global variable, which is navigator.dnt, and then you can inverse that value. So if it's do not track on, you put the inverse of that in a lookup table, and then you could use that inverse to disable things like mouse tracking or any kind of really stealth tracking. I've done that with when I've been using Yandex Metrica, I actually turn off click recording, session recording, just for partly because Yandex Metrica is based in Russia, but also just to kind of safeguard myself. So there's examples of that in my kind of script library. If you look at the Yandex Metrica sort of config file, or the GTM import, and also if you're using any of the techniques mentioned on EverCookie, you get a -1. EverCookie is a list of pretty stealthy methods of tracking. And the last one was if you're using Google Analytics to track the progress of Trojans and virus installs, you get a -100. You think I'm kind of kidding about this, but there's actually some systems that have been designed to track the performance of viruses being syndicated across the internet, because it turns out that even like virus writers want to see how stuff's performing. There's a really interesting TED talk about a guy from Sophos that managed to find and identify a person in Russia that was creating one of these kind of these payloads because he accidentally added his phone number into the reporting system. It wasn't actually Google Analytics, but it was something similar that texted him how much money he was making per day, and he obviously his phone number was exposed, and then he got detected by that. So a bit of a whoops, but yeah. So obviously you get -100 if you're a guy that creates Trojans and reports net. Interesting that even like bad guys kind of want to track performance of stuff. So that was the slides. What you then do is, if you got a 6 and you're a Luke, then you kind of minus your negative score from your positive, and then you'll get your overall score. So I'm going to stop talking. How did people kind of score on the negative side?
Yeah, we are totally whitehead.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Of course. Yes.
And we have an advantage. We have an advantage because we saw this on Super Week, so we were able to make it better.
What was happening next? Yeah. For people that were just watching, the idea behind this was that a lot of people think that they're really good, and they don't necessarily realize that there are things that they're doing that are not entirely kind of white. So the idea was to actually work out where they are on the scale. By taking that positive score of, say, 6 or 8, and then subtracting your negative score. And the great thing here is you could then go about fixing the negatives to improve your overall kind of your overall score. So you move from the dark side to the light side. So that's obviously the sum of both is the final score, and here's the kind of the intent here was to try and improve awareness of some of these bad techniques so that people aren't accidentally using them. Anonymized IP in Germany is a common one that's not turned on, where really it kind of should be. So you can instantly get remove a negative 1 point by fixing that. If you did get a dark score, there are 2 kind of Jedi temples that you can join to get back on the white side. There's MOA, which is a research-based organization which has a good kind of code of ethics, and there's also the Digital Analytics Association, which also has another code of ethics. And neither of these are enforced, but they're a good starting point for organizations to at least move in the right direction. And here was a slide from when I went out with my brother I organised his stag do. So he's in the Leia costume, and I'm in the Darth Maul one. Uncle is Darth Vader in there. So oh, actually, I pressed stop. Was it? I'm not sure it was on present to all on that. So maybe I'm not sure you saw it on, but. I'll stop talking, and so we're now on, how much time we got? Now on 10 minutes left. So has anyone got any other kind of questions or problems they're trying to solve, or things that they're stuck on, or
yeah, but it's a huge question, or maybe a whole webinar could be about this, but. Is it possible to make like a sample deployment of dynamic remarketing on a share screen to just make a webinar on that? I think that would be very interesting for a lot of guys.
Yes. Was there do you want me to do that on the enhanced e-commerce, the demo site?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And so what? Okay. There are going to be. There's two ways it can be done though. So the first one is going to be if there isn't a data layer present, and then the second way is going to be if just based off DOM scraping, so picking up all elements that are available. So the way that it's approached is depends on that first kind of point. So the e-commerce the demo site, the Google e-commerce demo, that does have a data layer, so I can use the easier approach. So okay, yeah, I can do a demo of that. That's probably going to be longer than sort of 10 minutes. I'll do some preparation for that, so I've got some slides.
Maybe it will be a next session. Sometime.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I have within the demo login, so the cool GTM stuff at Gmail, and then the password philrulesgtm, the number 3 at the end. If you log into that, that does have some examples of dynamic remarketing. So that's for Magento, and that one I've used the 2 AdWords remarketing tags, and then I'm just pre-populating the dynamic remarketing fields. Actually, I could screen share that.
What's the password? Sorry.
GTM. GTM.
GTM.
So I didn't create the password, so I said that. Yeah, no, it's just cool GTM stuff at gmail.com. And then the password was philrules GTM3. I keep having to change the number on the end just because Google Accounts keeps telling me that people are logging in on this from like random countries, which is what I want people to do, but I can't disable the Google Accounts security setting. I've set it to low on that, but it still keeps kind of forcing me to change the password every now and again. So yeah, I mean, if you log into that, I can probably screen share what you'd see if I. If I go on to Magento, that one, yeah. Let's try screen share from screen to share. Present to everyone. So can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Okay.
No.
Oh, actually, this one I'm on read-only mode. I need to just change. Actually, okay. So this is what you'll see on that login. So as I mentioned, so the login was cool GTM stuff at gmail.com. Phil, oops.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. So if you go to that login, and then you'll see this list. If, for instance, if you go into the Magento one as an example.
The piggybacking queue with plugin, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you click on tags. And then on the left-hand side, you'll see it says AdWords remarketing.
Yeah.
So one says.
Basket first.
So it's actually. Actually, I want the second one. In fact, sorry, the basket one. So you'll see this in read-only mode. It looks slightly different. What you can do here is so you can kind of edit this and experiment with it. If you actually click on admin and then go to it says export container. If you just click export the most recent container, so it's on 33 at the moment. Click continue, and click download, and then you can take that file, just randomly create a new account called testing.
And now we can upload it to our.
Testing import. Whoops. Because this particular account is all set to read-only mode. admin. Now then you can import that file that you've just downloaded. Downloads it was v33, and obviously on overwrite mode. And now you can actually I'll wait for it to finish doing that. Now it will display slightly differently when it's in edit mode, obviously rather than read only. But now when you go into oops, did I not complete that? I'll give it a second to confirm. Tags. Oh, that's interesting. For some reason it didn't like that import. That is very unusual. Okay, I've just found a new bug. Whoops. Remarketing examples. Okay, I'll do it a different way. I'll just import from a different account. Dropbox, templates, import. Magento new interface, overwrite, continue. Okay, just bear with me a second. Okay, that works. Must have been something wrong with the file that I exported. I thought it was the correct one I selected. Clearly not. Okay. Oh, sorry. So in this one now, it should be. So it's that one. And so now it's in edit mode, you can see what's happening. So on this particular remarketing tag, so this one was firing only on the basket page. So it actually had a tag down here that says only trigger if the page has a page type. This is a data layer kind of event of basket. And then if that is active, then it tries to fire the remarketing kind of tag, but it also tries to populate these fields down here where you've got obviously your product ID, where it's pulling from the page, so that there's a data layer field called SKU actually being output onto the page, and then it's also got the page type, which is that one.
Hello.
Yeah.
Jó van. Hát találkozzunk ott.
So it's able to set it to the
Jó, nekem kb. Fél óra.
the sort of relevant page type. Oh, sorry, this one's on page type of cart. My mistake, which it would be cart page. So the thing I've done on the other ones, so this is basically using a data layer method of configuring it. So I'm forcing the page type value of cart. If I go into the other one, which is running on all pages, not just the basket, it was all pages. You'll see that it's now dynamically determining what type of page it is. So on that one, on page type, so it's actually looking at the data layer and seeing, okay, this one's got a page type of product or category, and it remaps it to the Google kind of page type names. So it's this one, Rebels, down here. Just wait for that to load. So down here you can see that there's a page type. So cart, obviously that one's already being forced to be set, but the other ones where it's maybe outputting a data layer field of product, and I have to use these forced kind of names for product in lowercase in order for dynamic marketing to work. So this is a way where I've taken an existing data layer, this is a qubit data layer, and I've mapped it to the relevant kind of Google AdWords data layer field for page type. So then it would work correctly. So then the intent-based aspect of going home page, site search category, product page, then cart, and then purchase, that whole flow using dynamic remarketing will work. So that's how it's pulling, it's determining that. If you've already got a page that's outputting these fields already, then you wouldn't need to use this kind of mapping step in the middle. So that's it in a nutshell. I'll configure remarketing for the demo site of App Store. This one, I've got a demo, a config file for this, but I haven't added remarketing to it yet. So I'll prepare that for the next presentation, just so that I've got one that's sort of good to go. But by all means, kind of have a look through how I've configured the Magento's remarketing example. Cool. I'm going to now press stop on the recording. Stop broadcast. Bye.